think most people agree that artificial intelligence is going to change the world as we know it. We can argue about what belongs in the artificial intelligence pile, but that's not the discussion today. AI and automation and new computer stuff is going to change the world we live in. Just going to happen. Now, are those changes good, and are we looking in the right place? Because a lot of times we see these complaints or arguments about ChatGPT and generating images and generating movies, and that's where the focus is. But the focus really is kind of in the wrong place, in my opinion, because really what's going to happen is economically it's going to strike us somewhere else, and then we don't care about that anymore. So I read a lot of fiction books, and my channel has a bunch of stuff about fiction books all over it. But I came across one when I was reorganizing my shelves that I kind of forgotten about. I read years ago. It's from the 1950s, I think. It's this book called A is for Anything by Damon Knight. Yeah, 1959. That's it right there. So it was one of my dad's that I wound up with after he passed away. But it's about this. It's a science fiction book about this thing called the Gizmo. I know, really creative name, right? Called Gizmo. But it's a simple looking device that if you stick something into it, it can create an exact replica on the other side, whether that's an airplane, an old master painting, money, whatever you want. You put it in one side, you get more of it out the other. You get copies. Not that far off of that from but even in today's technology, Boeing notwithstanding. And they cut corners, so they didn't make exact copies. But anyway, uh, the point is the book's premise says that finally the era of man's leisure has arrived because you no longer have to work to provide things that you need: housing, food, water, money to buy these things, right? You can kind of produce whatever you want using the gizmo. But the interesting thing that happens when you use the gizmo too often, in the middle, I'm just going to read from the back of the book, and then we'll talk about it in a little more detail. In the middle of the 21st century, kind of where we are now, man returns to the horrors of a medieval serfdom. A society where everything is supplied by the gizmo can only produce a rigidly stratified social order. People that control the gizmo versus people that don't. Underlying the whole civilization are the Slavs, the slaves at the bottom who wait patiently for the day when dot, dot, dot. So really what they're saying, what the book says, and I read it years back, I'm gonna have to reread it, but the premise of the book is kind of interesting if you think about it in today's world. We are at a spot where everything's being automated. If you have a job that is repetitive in nature, there's a way out there to automate it, and it's a lot cheaper to do that than it used to be. We're seeing cooking robots turn up that can make hamburgers, French fries. I saw one making fried rice the other day, pizza, all kinds of stuff where you can now have a robot do it instead of a human. We've got some of the fast food places near here are using voice recognition technology. I know it's not AI, but it is automation to take your order, and it's more accurate than the humans. There are some YouTube videos of people confusing the voice recognition software, but you can confuse the human too if you shout weird stuff at it. So I don't really count that as a viable argument against. It's just, hey, yes, you can confuse the software just like you can confuse a person. Um, but what this is, what all that stuff has the potential to do, and I've said this on other videos, is any economic person who's being realistically looking at it has said that in the next 3 to 5 to 7 years, it has the potential to displace 30% or more of the global workforce, including the USA. And there's some arguments, oh yeah, we'll just create new jobs. Doing what? Because we just automated everything, right? So yeah, there'll be some people that need to work in AI, but even as someone who works in that field, which I do, and someone who works in software, which I do, we do more now with fewer engineers because of AI than we've done ever. I fed one of the AI systems a system requirement for a piece of code, just a decent little system, little breakout of one little algorithm I needed written, and it pumped out 350 lines of code that executed the first time and is now functional, and it's off and running. So that took me all of about 10 minutes. 350 lines of code used to be, half a week's or a week's worth of work for somebody, depending on the system. Sometimes you can write that much in a day, but still, it's not 15 minutes worth of work. So I'm doing more work with fewer engineers because of these tools and because of open source code and a lot of other reasons than ever before. That means we don't need as many software engineers to accomplish the same goals. We don't need as many fast food workers to accomplish the same goals. We don't need as many chefs to accomplish the same goals. So we can, we're on the cusp of creating a society where there's a lot more leisure time and you don't really need these things. And the trouble is, it's has been creating for some time this sort of bifurcated part of the economy, where it's sort of, you're over here or you're over here, and trying to jump between those two requires like a marriage, right? So it's very difficult to jump from one to the other. How weird is that, and how long has it been going on? Well, we've been automating stuff since, forever ago, right? The 40s, 50s, more so in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and the speed of that automation has increased even through today. But let's look at something for one of my other videos that shows just how weird it's getting. So like if you all these numbers are adjusted for inflation, these are adjusted to 1979, I'm sorry, 2022 dollars. But I tracked everything from house prices and income across that entire time. I took the average price, the average income from 1973 through 2022 and said, what was the ratio of those? So what was the house price to the average income? Average house, average income. And in 1973, it was 1.3 times your annual salary was spent on your home based on your income. That has gone up throughout time to where now it's 11.3 to 1, or at least it was in 2022. Um, that's a big number. And that's why you have a lot of families now living paycheck to paycheck. You have a lot of even dual income families living paycheck to paycheck is because of housing, rental, food, cars, all getting more expensive relative to income. And the pace of that is outpacing inflation, at least in the case of housing, which everybody needs. Um, and food to some extent, but the numbers are on housing, so let's stick with that. But you know, A is for anything is a very interesting sci-fi premise, and a lot of sci-fi books have a tendency to be very accurately predicting the future in some ways. Star Trek transporters notwithstanding, although that would be kind of fun if those actually work, but they don't. Um, it predicts this sort of world where we now have this caste system, and this book hits on something a lot of economists and people are starting to circle around is, have we done that? Have we kind of gotten the point, economically speaking, where this is the case? And what AI offers us the opportunity to do is make it so that everybody can have more leisure time because you don't have to work as much. The trouble is, what do you do about the economics of the situation? And I'm not talking about my economics or your economics. I'm talking about general economy-wide, global economy scale changes that might need to be looked at if as we go into the next 50 or 100 years, because the technology is there to change the world for everybody. It just exists. But we have to decide, are we going to change it for everybody, or are we going to change it? Is it going to become, as in this book, medieval, the people at the top versus the people at the bottom? Which way is that going to go? We really need to answer that question. We really need to dig into that question deeply before those changes occur and it becomes sort of a revolution that takes place, because that never really works very well for anybody. A lot of people wind up dying. So I think those conversations need to take place sooner rather than later. But I hope everybody has a great day. Click like, subscribe, follow wherever you see me. I'm always around on social media someplace. Everybody have a great day.